Beth and Rip's spinoff needs to avoid being Yellowstone Season 6, and just not because of potential legal problems. Taylor Sheridan must avoid making Beth and Rip's spin-off show into Yellowstone Season 6, not just because of the potential legal battle over the rights to stream the series. Mere days before the Yellowstone Season 5 finale, a report confirmed Beth and Rip's Yellowstone spin-off would continue the Lovebird stories after Yellowstone's ending. While Kelly Riley and Cole Hauser keeping their Yellowstone characters alive was an exciting prospect, the announcement triggered the potential for legal battles between the companies that stream Yellowstone and its spin-off shows, since Beth and Rip's show could look a lot like Yellowstone Season 6. The legal battles will insist that Beth and Rip's Yellowstone spin-off distinguish itself from the flagship series, and we'll get into that next. Still, legal battles aside, Rayleigh and Hauser's characters deserve a show that distinguishes itself from the Kevin Costner-led series. While Beth's story indelibly connects to John Dutton case and all the other Yellowstone Season 5 characters, Beth and Rip's substantial Yellowstone backstories and enigmatic personalities have the chops to stand on their own. So Sheridan ought to give the characters a story that's independent of the Dutton family's struggles. The Deadline report that confirmed Beth and Rip's Yellowstone spinoff insinuated that it was favorable for Paramount Network's parent, Paramount Global, to produce a new series instead of Yellowstone Season 6, because an offshoot would bring the continuation of Yellowstone into the company's ecosystem. Paramount has a deal with Peacock's parent company, NBCUniversal, giving Peacock exclusive streaming rights to the franchise's flagship. In other words, Peacock can stream Kevin Costner's series, but Paramount Plus can't. Therefore, continuing Beth and Rip's story outside the flagship allows Paramount Network and Paramount Plus to air and stream the show exclusively. A report from Puck claimed the choice to produce Rip and Beth's spinoff versus Yellowstone could trigger a legal battle with Peacock. As the Beth and Rip Yellowstone spinoff takes shape, it must distinguish itself from a potential Yellowstone Season 6 to avoid legal battles, proving that the spinoff was more than just a way to skirt the network's existing deal. The deal predates Paramount Plus, which has the rights to stream Sheridan's other series, such as prequels 1883 and 1923, and everything the screenwriter produces thereafter. Sheridan has a deal with Paramount Plus to create content for the platform until 2028. While the legal battle marks Yellowstone's Beth and Rip spinoff encountering its first big problem, it isn't bad news for the series. Other reasons exist that Hauser and Riley's series should distinguish itself from the flagship, rather than just becoming a continuation of Yellowstone, with them at the center instead of Costner. Beth and Rip have rich backstories in Yellowstone, potentially more than any other characters, including John Dutton. Flashbacks in the original series extensively paint Beth and Rip's adolescence, emboldening the characters' strong personalities in the present. The continuation of Beth and Rip's story deserves the same distinguished treatment. Furthermore, Beth and Rip's story must prove it warrants a continuation. While Beth and Rip's spin-off announcement cheapened the Yellowstone season finale, the couple had a sweet ending that neatly wrapped up their story. Sheridan could have just left Beth and Rip's story where it was, allowing fans to spin their own conclusions about how the couple would navigate the brutal winters in Dillon, Montana, with their adopted son, Carter. In other words, Beth, Carter, and Rip's story didn't need to continue. But now that it will, the Dutton-Wheelers need a fresh narrative that honors the family's independent journey. There are significant ties between Beth and Rip's story and a potential Yellowstone Season 6. The Deadline report suggested that Beth and Rip's spinoff will include the Yellowstone moniker in the title and some of the flagship's main characters in the cast. With such blatant connections to the main show, the series must make decisive creative choices that distinguish Beth and Rip's story from the Montana Dynasty saga thus far. The flagship's ultimate episode set up Beth and Rip to differentiate themselves successfully, despite the Yellowstone finale ruling out an interesting Beth and Rip story in Texas. Despite staying in Montana, Beth and Rip's distance from the heirloom Yellowstone Dutton Ranch will give their story an entirely new backdrop. As Beth and Rip relinquish stewardship of the ranch, they will face altogether different hurdles. The spinoff should focus more on Beth and Rip's past and future, rather than continuing to hash the Dutton family's issues with their land legacy, which Yellowstone fleshed out as Beth and Rip are concerned. If the flagship continues with Yellowstone Season 6, Beth and Rip's story might be free of legal hurdles, but it should distinguish itself from Yellowstone regardless. The Yellowstone universe is expanding, and while that excites many fans, it also presents a challenge. Ensuring that Beth and Rip's spinoff doesn't simply feel like an extension of Yellowstone Season 6. Given the legal and contractual issues swirling around Taylor Sheridan's flagship show, it's already clear that any new project must carve out its own identity. But even beyond those potential roadblocks, Beth and Rip's story needs to stand on its own, separate from the ghosts of the Dutton family drama we've already seen. Establishing a unique identity. One of the biggest pitfalls Beth and Rip's spinoff could fall into is relying too heavily on the Yellowstone formula. If it just picks up where Season 5 left off, same conflicts, same power struggles, same sweeping Montana landscapes, then why not just call it Season 6? The spinoff must have a fresh hook. Whether that means changing locations, introducing new stakes, or taking the couple on a completely different kind of journey, there has to be something that distinguishes this series from the one fans already know. Perhaps the best way to do this is by shifting the focus away from the ranch wars and land disputes that dominated Yellowstone. Beth and Rip's story, at its core, is a love story. That love has survived countless obstacles, from abusive childhoods to betrayals and bloodshed. What if the spinoff leaned into that personal journey rather than the broader Dutton family politics? Escaping the ranch drama. While the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch has been the heart of the original series, Beth and Rip's spinoff doesn't necessarily need to be tethered to it. In fact, breaking away from the ranch might be the best way to forge a new narrative path. Perhaps Beth and Rip are forced to relocate, whether by choice or by necessity. Maybe they start over in Texas or Colorado, far from the shadow of John Dutton. This would allow them to interact with a different landscape, new challenges, and fresh characters that aren't tied to the familiar faces of Yellowstone. Relocating could also force them to evolve in ways Yellowstone never allowed. Rip has always been a man of duty, fiercely loyal to the Duttons. But if he and Beth are finally on their own, who is he outside of that loyalty? Beth, for all of her cunning and ruthlessness, has always defined herself in relation to her father's legacy. Who is she when that legacy is no longer a factor? These are the kinds of character explorations that could make the spinoff feel fresh rather than redundant. Avoiding over-reliance on familiar faces. A spinoff should be an opportunity to build something new, not just recycle the same faces and dynamics. While it would be tempting to pepper the new series with cameos from Yellowstone characters, Case, Monica, Jamie, and even John in flashbacks, the show needs to resist that urge. If every few episodes bring in a familiar face, it'll start to feel like an extended epilogue rather than its own entity. Instead, the spin-off should introduce a compelling new supporting cast. Perhaps Beth and Rip find themselves in a town filled with its own brand of corruption, with new adversaries who challenge them in ways the Duttons never did. Maybe they build a family, whether through unlikely friendships or even by taking in a troubled teen who reminds them of their younger selves. The key is to give them people to interact with who bring out new facets of their personalities, rather than rehashing old dynamics. A different tone and pacing. Yellowstone has a very distinct tone, gritty, violent, and often Shakespearean in its family betrayals. While Beth and Rip's spinoff shouldn't completely abandon that, it should explore new storytelling avenues. One potential shift could be in pacing. Yellowstone often built its tension through slow-burn power plays and sudden bursts of violence. A spin-off could experiment with a different rhythm, perhaps a more intimate, character-driven drama with noir or Western thriller elements.